Welcome to a new video with the electric trucker. This week is going to be super exciting. We've just added 5 brand new Mercedes eActros trucks to the fleet, and I have the honor of testing one of them. And what better way to test it than with a trip to Gibraltar? It's Sunday at 10 in the evening, and I'm about to start my week. I already loaded the truck last week, and the drop-off location is Madrid. We're on the road with a stunning evening vibe. We're heading 3,000 kilometers down to southern Spain to pick up life rafts. But it doesn't make sense to drive down there empty, so I loaded up a shipment last week that needs to go to Madrid. The cargo is paper rolls. They're stacked upright and are really heavy, 23.5 tons. The whole truck weighs exactly 42 tons, so this is a serious endurance test, long distance and super heavy. My colleague Mike just passed me. He's also headed to Gibraltar with a megaliner, and he's traveling with his wife. She doesn't drive herself, which would be a big advantage time-wise, so he still has to stick to all the regular driving and rest time rules. We'll see when we'll run into each other again. I'm in Düsseldorf for my first stop. Here is a special truck lane with 2 charging stations so you can charge conveniently from the side. The charging curve is basically a straight line and the battery voltage is incredibly high. I think it's one of the highest battery voltages I've ever seen. Now I've got one small problem. The original plan was to drive past the border into France, where there's a good truck charging park, but I can't quite make it in time, so I have to adjust my plan a bit. There's an Aral Pulse station in Saarbrücken that I'll give a try. I don't have to stop there since I have enough battery to drive through the whole day, but if it works, I'll top up. If not, I'll just take my rest. I noticed a couple of quirks that I want to share with you. If I disengage the cruise control and use the regen, I can't reactivate cruise control while regen is still activated. And even weirder, when you drive with cruise control and you see a roundabout coming up, you'd start braking or use regen. But once you're in the roundabout and turn off the regen, the truck turns cruise control back on and accelerates to the previously set speed. No other truck I've driven does that. Usually as soon as you brake or use regen, the cruise control switches off and stays off until you manually turn it back on. This setup could theoretically lead to tricky situations if the truck suddenly accelerates when you're not expecting it. It's not a huge deal, but definitely something to get used to. I haven't seen this behavior in any other electric truck so far. Something else I discovered is the smartphone app for this truck. If you go into the apps section, you can connect the Remote Truck 3.0 app. It generates a QR code on screen, and with that, you can pair your phone with the vehicle. I'll try that out later. As an electric trucker, you have to be flexible with charging locations. I drove a bit further and found an older Ionity station where you can drive in perfectly, plug in on the right, and it works without any issues even with the trailer attached. I don't have to charge right now, but since I got such a good spot, I might as well. Now we can take a look at how the PPC works, the Predictive Powertrain Control. You can see at the bottom that it's active. Now there's a roundabout coming up, and based on the GPS maps it uses, it knows this in advance and adapts for an efficient driving style. You can see that it recognizes the roundabout and shows it on the dashboard. It does all the braking and regen on its own, and you can also adjust the target speed. Not in exact kilometers per hour, but in stages. But a super attentive truck driver is the most efficient truck driver. Even Mercedes admits that, but a driver isn't always attentive. And you don't always check the navigation screen to see when a turn or roundabout is coming up. So this is definitely a helpful feature. And despite the truck being 42 tons, 800 horsepower are definitely enough. You never feel like you're lacking momentum. There's another roundabout coming up, so I'm giving it another try. I'm going into the settings now and set the curve speed to minimum as well as the coasting before route events. Roundabout speed is now 20 kilometers per hour. Perfect. You can accelerate out a bit faster afterwards, but it works. I'm now at Mailand, with 6 minutes of driving time left, and I'm really looking forward to my bed. We're enjoying the sun at this small Mailand charging park. At first the truck didn't want to start charging, and it turns out the ignition has to be off. That's also the case with some electric cars, while with others it only works with the ignition on. Since I'm staying overnight, I activated the Eco charging mode. There are 3 charging modes, and the Eco mode charges with 100 kilowatts, but it's more battery friendly when standing still for longer. But this is the coolest function of them all. The truck shows me how much power the charging station actually provides. That's super helpful if you're getting lower power and aren't sure if it's the station or the truck's fault. Here you can clearly see it. But I'm really tired now. I did nap a bit earlier, but driving through the night until 9 is exhausting. Now it's time for some proper sleep. See you later. The second day begins, and there wasn't much going on at the charging park, probably because it's relatively new. I'm headed towards Bordeaux, but I probably won't make it all the way there. I've picked out a few charging parks where you can park with a trailer. I also use the eTrucker app, but France isn't packed with detailed data yet. The one I'm heading to now has only 200 kilowatts, but at least it's a proper truck charging park. And since I'll be driving 10 hours again today and need 2 stops, it's not an issue. Being in a new country and finding charging parks where you can charge cheaply is also a challenge, but so far it's working out well. Earlier I was parked with the air conditioning on because the sun was so strong I wouldn't have survived without it. You can turn the ignition on during charging and then the climate control works. But after an hour or two it turns off again. I'll have to see if there's a permanent climate mode because that's not really ideal. The alternative is to just turn the truck on, but then the daytime running lights are on as well and you can't turn them off. That's something the DAF did quite well. If you turned the lights off while parked, you could shut them off completely and a little symbol would appear showing that there's no exterior lighting. I've never seen that before and thought it was pretty cool. The lighting setup here isn't that well thought through. It does have an automatic light system, but right now only the front daytime running lights are on and the rear is completely dark. There is a Scandinavian setting where you can have the rear lights on too, but it has to be enabled by the dealer. You'd think you could just switch on the parking lights and everything would light up, but the back is still dark. I didn't know that it was even legal to drive a truck without daytime running lights, so the only option is to drive with full headlights on, which just wastes energy and doesn't look great. It's a bit of a shame that you can't completely turn off the lights while parked, and that the daytime running lights aren't always on while driving. There are different strategies from different manufacturers, but this is honestly the worst one I've seen so far. I'm now in a small industrial area with a beautiful evening atmosphere. This charging station only has 200 kilowatts, but that doesn't bother me at all since the battery isn't even close to empty. They also have hydrogen and liquefied gas here, and the charging station shares the parking spot with the hydrogen pump. Even though there are car symbols painted on the ground, it's clearly designed to work as a drive-through setup for trucks too. But it might get pretty difficult to refuel hydrogen here. The setup looks a bit dusty, and if you take a closer look, the nozzle is missing. The display is totally dead too, and you can just walk right into the booth. Feels almost like a Lost Places video you could watch on YouTube. I believe this was a pilot project they built a few years ago to test which of the two technologies would work and which wouldn't. And it's a good example of how a few years ago, no one really knew where things were headed, so they funded a bunch of different projects. But now you can see the results. Here's a battery electric truck with 600 kilometers of range making a quick stop, and the hydrogen station doesn't work anymore. At some point, you learn what works economically and physically from these pilot projects, and focus on that. The charging station is not charging as fast as it could. Why exactly, I don't know. Now a little change of plans. The eTrucker app works great in Germany, and for France, we added the official truck charging parks, but there just aren't that many listed yet. I now filtered for my lens, and this one fits perfectly. I'll reach it after 4.5 hours of driving. The next one would be 500 kilometers away, about 6.5 hours. And if I check how much I'm still allowed to drive today, it's 6 hours and 39 minutes, so both fit perfectly into my schedule. I can cover a lot of ground today. Many people can't understand what makes the job of a truck driver so special, but I totally get the passion. I think it's really cool to be out here with this truck on long-distance routes, and at night when the whole world is asleep and you're the one being productive. And especially when you're doing it in a super modern truck. I'm so thankful to be able to drive electric across Europe in such an amazing truck with great charging parks along the way. I'm listening to an 8-hour podcast right now. When else do you get the chance to do that if not in a truck? Sometimes you've got to pause and appreciate the moment, because it all flies by so fast. If you never stop to look around, you might miss it. I'm enjoying every single moment of being out here driving electric trucks. So.
MacGyver. Oh, nein.
A quick 45-minute charging stop. It's pretty nice here, and ready for more charges. The display is broken, but it's averaging around 350 kilowatts, so not bad. The station can't quite hold 400 kilowatts, but the truck's already back at 56%. That's more than enough for the final leg. I've got about 3 hours left to drive with a 2-minute buffer on my driving time to get there. Sometimes I really wonder who planned these parks. These rocks are placed so inconveniently it makes me question if I can even get out. I'm almost through France, and the truck's performance has been really solid. I've had good weather conditions, but the truck is super heavy, and I'm still making good progress. If we look at consumption, I averaged 1.06 kilowatt hours per kilometer. That's a top value and almost 600 kilometers of range with maximum weight. On the return trip, I'll be much lighter, so it will be even better. Driving across Europe in this truck is surprisingly easy. It's getting bright again, and I've reached today's destination. Today I drove 784 kilometers, which is a really solid day's drive. And once again, I'm at a Mailand's charging park. And the side mirrors swing while turning. Super helpful, and you can turn that on and off with a button.
Hi, it's me again. Could you let me in?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you.
It's 2 in the afternoon, I'm rested and currently west of Montpellier. I'm now heading toward Barcelona, and truck charging parks are getting a bit more sparse now. It's 35 degrees already, and I'm not even in Spain yet. This is going to be a wild tour. In these conditions, the air conditioning is absolutely crucial for a truck like this. I managed to keep the cabin cooled overnight. When the truck is charging and you try to switch to ready mode, you get an error message saying it's not possible while plugged in. But after doing that once, the climate control stayed on all night. That's super important because it's only going to get hotter. When the sun beats down on the cab, it's unbearable without proper cooling. And this is one of the big advantages of an electric truck. You don't run into the same issues as with some diesel trucks, where the 24-volt battery might drain and force you to run the engine all day without driving. Another cool thing are the sanitary facilities at the charging parks here in France. They're all temporary container setups, but that works just fine. You notice how essential they are though. These places are kind of like gated communities. There's a bit of infrastructure around, but imagine if we had to ring the bell at Mailand's every time we needed to use the restroom. That would get awkward quickly. There's another gate up ahead that swings open and looks barrier-free. That got me thinking, do truck charging parks actually need to be handicapped accessible? Regular charging stations have to be, but is there a case of a truck driver who uses a wheelchair? I've never really thought about that. We're really heavy but still manage to pull up the hill just fine. We're keeping up with the other trucks, even though there are definitely slower ones around. What's interesting is the boost mode. In cruise control, it doesn't use the full power. It feels like this one holds back a bit. If I press the pedal manually, it accelerates a little more, and we could go a bit faster. That just shows that everything here is optimized for efficiency. Driving an electric truck doesn't necessarily mean going slow, because I'm really pushing it now. In Spain, you're allowed to drive up to 90 kilometers per hour. My GPS speed is 88 kilometers per hour, and it's a 2-hour and 32-minute drive to the charging station. I have 2 hours and 36 minutes of driving time left, so it fits perfectly. If all goes well, I'll be in Madrid tomorrow. It's 37 degrees up front, and the truck is pushing through those mountains with its 42 tons like nothing. Inside, you don't notice it at all. The consumption is at 1.38 kilowatt hours per kilometer on this uphill stretch. But I'm not getting any info on how hard it's working. I can't check the kilowatts or the battery temperature. It's really holding back on info for the driver. Maybe there's a warning if things get critical, but right now you can't really tell how warm or cold the battery is. This is the perfect stop with 1 minute left on the tachograph. The charging park looked different in the pictures, but it fits. A small Ionity charging park with 4 chargers, and on the left side, 2 more are prepped. You can park nicely sideways, and you don't block anyone behind. I could have parked on the other end too, since I can charge on both sides. And I keep forgetting it's already evening, and everyone finished driving, while I'm on a completely different rhythm. For me, it's just lunch break. What I just noticed, this truck has sensors for blind spot warnings integrated right in the headlights. That's smart because snow or dirt won't build up on them. If you ever wonder why those parts look kind of odd, that's a sensor scanning the area in front for obstacles, pedestrians, or cyclists. The cable just barely fits because the charging port on the truck is set quite far back. The front part is reserved for MCS charging. On the other side, the CCS port is further forward, but so far it hasn't caused any problems yet. If it had charged consistently at 350 kilowatts, everything would have been fine. But because it didn't, I had to charge 15 minutes longer to get to 60%. The route goes slightly uphill, and it's showing me 330 kilometers of range, while the destination is 284 kilometers away. It's not exactly tight, but it's never been this close before. Since I'm not under time pressure and will call it a day afterward, I've switched to range mode, which means it's limited to 70% of power. That means it climbs hills slowly, and I can only go up to 82 kilometers per hour. Now I just hope I'll make it. Earlier, it got really tight with the range. The remaining range was exactly the same as the distance to the destination, but now things have relaxed a bit, and the range mode really makes a lot of sense, especially when you're going up and down hills. In combination with the PPC, which carries the momentum, it all makes a lot of sense. You only feel if a truck is fast or slow when you're using the throttle. When you're not, it's just steering with adaptive cruise control behind another truck. You're just driving without thinking too much. And for efficiency, that's a dream. We're now at 1.02 kilowatt hours per kilometer, so it does make a difference. We also saw with the MAN and DAF that less power is better for efficiency. I'll probably start using this mode more often when I'm taking it easy, because you can go further, save money, and use fewer resources. Maybe I underestimated these mountains. The truck is really struggling with just 70% power, and I've only got 4% battery left. Mountains aren't the worst, but they definitely take a toll when your semi-truck is at maximum weight, and the worst case scenario would be if I run out of juice right at the crest. But what can you do? It'll work out. Hopefully. Oh well, I'm standing here and can't drive on, because I made it to the charging station. The hazard lights were just for the drama. Tip number 1, always keep the topography in mind, especially if you're cutting it close. You really need to know what you're doing. You can't miss the exit, and you have to know if there's another mountain coming. I calculated the final climb, but not the hill before it. That's the one you can't get stuck on. Charging is working with 350 kilowatts. It shouldn't even take 2 hours to fully charge. There's tons of space here and a few free truck spots up front. The plan is to fully charge now, unload tomorrow, and then charge up again south of Madrid. My daily rhythm was totally messed up, but if you keep consistently driving 10 hours and take your 9-hour rest, then you're not even using a full 24 hours. That helps you catch up a bit. And now it's just after midnight. Almost a normal schedule again. I'm just outside of Madrid, about 20 minutes from my destination. I think I'll still be able to unload this afternoon. For now, I'm going to stop at a fuel station because I'm joining an online conference. There are some charging stations nearby too, but I have to check the prices to see if it's worth it. The conference went really well. I was a bit nervous because the internet connection dropped a couple of times. But during the presentation, everything ran smoothly. Here, I have my fold-out table where I can put my laptop. I even grabbed a coffee and set up a little studio here. Now I'm just tidying up, getting another coffee, and will unload and rack up some kilometers later today. For me, it's really important that a car does exactly what I want, especially when it comes to climate control and lighting. It reminds me that Volkswagen makes great cars, but their logic with the seat occupancy sensor is just frustrating. If you lift your butt off the seat, the AC immediately turns off. That's just annoying, and you have to use all sorts of tricks to keep it running. Totally unnecessary. What's cool here, though, if you leave the car on in ready mode and then lock it, the daytime running lights stay on, but your dog can stay in the climate-controlled cabin. That's perfect when you're loading stuff for an hour in 30 degrees Celsius heat. The AC really needs to do exactly what I want it to. The cargo is unloaded in Madrid, and I'm doing one more quick charging stop because I needed a rest break. The charger is capable of 350 kilowatts, but the truck doesn't want to charge that fast. 320 is still solid, but I'm curious why it's not more. The charging station is a pretty basic setup. 4 stalls with a bit of space in front. Not as much room as usual, but still enough to park with a trailer. Just have to back out carefully so I don't roll over the curb. I'll go for a little walk with my dog in the desert, and after that, we'll drive one more short leg. The further south you go, the fewer charging options there are. But I think I'll find a charging station where I can spend the night. Then tomorrow, I'll head to Gibraltar. It's crazy how efficient the truck is without the heavy load. At 68%, it's showing a range of 490 kilometers. I've driven 426 kilometers so far, and I'll end the day at around 540 kilometers. That's not huge, but today was pretty busy with unloading. Mike, who's driving the diesel, is scheduled to arrive tomorrow at 10 in the morning, and I'll get there a few hours later. But if I hadn't had the appointment today, where I spent about 4 hours, I would arrive just as fast with the electric truck. While 35 degrees Celsius in full sunshine is tough, 30 degrees Celsius in the evening is quite nice. I'm at this small Ionity station. It's pretty idyllic and just 2 charging stalls, but it works. There's plenty of room to park with a trailer, and being able to charge on the right side is super convenient. Spain has so much space. It's a dream for long-distance drivers. The only downside is all the paved surface. But purely from a truck driver's perspective, it's awesome. I'll charge up for a bit, then just roll a few meters over and park across some empty spots. I'm making one more quick stop, even though I didn't need to charge. But I don't know my way around Gibraltar well enough to roll in with an empty battery. And after just 32 minutes, I'm already fully charged. Now I should arrive without issues. Next to me, there's an Audi S6 charging with some wild-looking rims. Looks like 2 Audi prototype drivers are with it, guarding the charging station. At 61%, it was still pulling 180 kilowatts. I've been driving along the coast since Malaga, and the whole time I've been watching out for Mike, since he was 1 or 2 hours ahead of me for loading. Maybe he's still at the location. I talked to him on the phone this morning, and someone stole diesel from his truck in France. Sadly, that's a really common issue for truck drivers. People come at night, open the tank, and just siphon the diesel. Especially with large tanks, it's a massive financial hit. And obviously, you're not going to confront them. Usually you don't even notice until it's too late. We actually don't lock the tanks anymore because experience has shown that if thieves want in, they'll break the lock anyway. And then you're stuck not just with the lost fuel, but also a damaged tank that needs repairs. That's one advantage of electric trucks. Someone could steal power with bidirectional charging, but that's not really a thing yet. I'm loaded with 9 large life rafts and the trailer is about 3/4 full. It's a volume load at just under 10 tons, so the consumption should be lower as well. I asked if there's another partial load to pick up, but there's nothing else planned. Technically, I still have about 4 meters of space in the back, but it's probably not worth the effort. The plan is to drive up along the east coast and take the same way back because of those Malens charging sites in eastern France. They're spaced perfectly every 4.5 hours. Wouldn't make sense to skip it. With the current load, the truck shows a range of 510 kilometers at 78% battery, meaning a range of 650 kilometers at 100%. That's impressive. Also, I always have to turn the fan speed down so you can hear me properly in the videos. I turned it off for just 1 minute, and the sun immediately started roasting the cabin. It's 35 degrees Celsius out here, and you can feel how quickly the heat builds up. Working in conditions like this is no joke. Charging is going smoothly and I've got plenty of space. I'll probably top the truck up and then just keep driving until my driving hours are up. I'm sure I'll find a good place to stop for the night. I just drove through some proper mountains again, and now it's going downhill as I get closer to the sea. I've got 24 minutes of driving time left, so I'll take my rest break soon. It's interesting what the display shows here. There's a visual indicator for power use and recuperation. When I manually brake using recuperation, it shows the stages on screen and even shows the average consumption. Right now, it's 107 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. But what's missing is any info on how much power is going back into the battery during recuperation. I know it's a lot right now because the descent is steep, but that number would be helpful to see. But it's very rare that the truck hits the limit of regen and has to use the mechanical brakes. That's way more common with trucks that have less powerful drivetrains. Good morning. My Friday has started and I'm cruising through the desert. And something I haven't shown yet, the sun visors. The left and right ones are manual, but the one in front is actually electric. You just press a button and it goes down on its own. Now my plan. In theory, I could make it to just before Barcelona today. I've picked out a charging station I can reach, and after that there's another Ionity station about 5 hours away. If I want to make it there, I'd need to average 88 kilometers per hour. So I'll charge a bit more at the first station to be safe. I would cover 730 kilometers in one day within my 9 hours of driving. Days like this are pretty typical for long-haul driving in Europe and quite relaxing. When the timing works out with one charging stop right in the middle of your 9-hour drive, it feels like a short workday. You just drive, take a short lunch break, and that's it. It's a normal, not too demanding day. Of course, when loading, unloading, or other stuff gets added, long-haul driving can get stressful. But if it's just 9 hours of holding the wheel and nothing else, then it's really chill, especially in a comfortable truck like this. We're back at the coast with an amazing view. The highway now stretches along the sea. Such a beautiful trip. I've got about 10 minutes left until I reach the charging station, and I still have 43 minutes of driving time left, so it fits perfectly. And a little side note, there's the game Euro Truck Simulator 2. I've played it regularly, and now the Nano Janssen trucks are actually in the game, with exactly the same trucks I've driven. Someone put in a lot of effort to recreate these trucks, and every day there are people who watch the videos, then open their laptop and drive around in these trucks in the game. So surprising and cool, really made me happy. I'm doing my charging stop, and for the first time on this trip, it's not going well. I pulled up to the charging station with 2 small Ionity chargers rated for 350 kilowatts. I plugged in and only got 160. I waited a bit, then plugged into the second charger, and there I only got 80. Never stop a running system. So I moved again, but now that charger also only gave me 80. The power even dropped to 40 kilowatts. I was completely confused. So I drove to the other side of the highway, and now I'm standing here. Here is the same setup with 2 chargers, but again I only got 80 kilowatts. I thought it must be some load management, that the 160 kilowatts are shared because there was a Volvo charging next to me. I thought hard about what could be causing this, and check this out. There's a small container here, but on the other side, there were 2 containers. So over there is probably the transformer, and here are the DC racks for the chargers. I assume they share the grid connection, and the cables are under the highway. I've never seen that before. In total, only 160 kilowatts are available here, and as soon as a second vehicle plugs in, no matter whether here or on the other side, the charging power halves and then keeps dropping. When I repositioned from 160 to 80 kilowatts, another car arrived at the station and reduced the available power. Such a unique setup. It works, but the grid connection is just really weak. The only thing to criticize is the communication. Ionity should update their app because it shows 350 kilowatts. If they know that it's not available, they shouldn't list it. They should be honest and just list a maximum of 160 kilowatts. Maybe that's bad for branding because people expect 350 kilowatts, but having wrong info is even worse. Now about my rest time. I have to do an 11-hour rest period today, but I can split it to 9 and 3 hours of rest. If I stay here for 3 hours, my daily rest period is reduced from 11 to 9 hours. I thought with 9 plus 3 hours totaling 12 hours, I'd lose 1 hour. But that's not true, because the 3-hour break starts when you also have to take a 45-minute break. So actually you only lose about 15 minutes. Splitting your daily rest like this when you don't have appointments and just drive is really helpful. I still need 4 hours and 44 minutes to my destination, which is also my remaining driving time. Because it's more than 4.5 hours, I have to take another 45-minute break, but I only have 5 hours left on my shift. And here comes the trick with splitting. After the 3-hour break, I get 2 hours of shift time added, so I can keep driving and take the additional break. Without splitting, I would have to stop earlier. Now the charging power dropped again to 82 kilowatts. And if you look over to the other side, you can see that one of the chargers is in use. I've never seen anything like this, but in Spain, everything is different. They've got their own rules. The truck is always having trouble connecting to Android Auto. It says the Wi-Fi credentials are incorrect, but I can't even enter them manually. What am I supposed to do? And the worst part is, this message doesn't go away. You can't dismiss it, and it's blocking everything. I can't even use the climate controls or the rest of the menu. The funniest thing is, I even turned off Wi-Fi, but the screen is still frozen. Super buggy. In theory, my plan made sense, but what I didn't expect was this massive traffic jam here in Valencia, but I still have a few hours left. Let's see how it goes. Because of the traffic jam, my plan didn't work out. I can still drive for another 57 minutes, but it's 1 hour and 10 minutes to the charging station. So I'll just drive for another 42 minutes, and then look for a place to park overnight. The battery's only half empty anyway. I'm now just outside Barcelona and giving the truck a quick charge for 45 minutes so I can reset my driving time. Then I'll drive the last stretch for this week. This is a bigger service station, and this is exactly how charging parks should be built nowadays. The chargers are set up sideways, which is the most flexible option. Any vehicle can plug in. There's a bit of space in front in case you need to maneuver, and a large open area in the back, which most fuel stations already have. Trucks can charge here, normal cars, and even cars with trailers or caravans. It's crazy when you compare this to the space required for those Milans charging parks. Here, 3 trucks can charge at once, and the space needed is just a fraction. Sure, you need to back in, but there are tons of parking spots all over Europe where trucks have to reverse in or out anyway. That's totally normal. And these are the kinds of charging parks that end up generating the most revenue. I've never driven as many kilometers in a single week as I have now. I've already done 4,135 kilometers. My previous record was 3,500 with the DAF. But now it's over for the week because there are rules about weekly driving time and also 2-week driving time that you can't exceed. The maximum you're allowed to drive in a single week is 56 hours. I'm already at 50 hours and will drive another 4, so I'm really at the limit. For the 2-week period, you're allowed to drive a maximum of 90 hours total. So the ideal setup is to drive 45 hours per week, but now that I've done 56 hours this week, I can only drive 34 hours next week. I think it's a good thing that truck drivers can't be overworked. A tough week like this is doable now and then, but the following week therefore ends up being more relaxed since you're allowed fewer hours behind the wheel. I didn't make it to the Milans location I was originally aiming for because of traffic and my driving time limit. I got off at the stop before, and it's a nice spot, although not yet fully equipped with charging stations. They've got temporary toilets and showers, but they work just fine. I just showered and did some laundry, and the charging park is huge. It's definitely prepped for way more chargers in the future. It wasn't that easy to find though. When you exit the highway and follow the navigation system, it takes you down a main road and then suddenly says, you've arrived. And the second downside, which is probably due to the temperature, is that the charging station isn't holding the full power. It's brand new with the protective film still on it.
Woo!
Right now, I'm only getting 257 kilowatts. I'm going to fully charge here now, then head to a secure truck parking area to spend the weekend. There's another Mylance site there too, and if I end up using a lot of power with the air conditioning, I can top up again before heading off. And now I've got some crazy news. The session where I arrived with just 2% battery was absolutely massive. That single charging session was 637 kilowatt hours in just 2 hours. That's an insane amount. Of course, that's much more than the usable battery capacity, which makes sense because you always have some charging losses, but still, that's enormous. So I reached out to Ionity and they checked their back-end data, and it turns out this was the biggest charging session ever recorded at Ionity. Funny enough, second place goes to a city bus in Poland, but I actually beat that Polish bus by just 0.8 kilowatt hours. Even when Mercedes did their European tour and charged at Ionity, never hit numbers like this. Back there is a big secure truck parking area, but it looks completely full. I'm curious to see if I can still get a spot. I'm parked across the street at my lens for now, topping up the battery one last time for the stats. That way, I can get some solid data to analyze the charging losses. This week was a real extreme test. 4,500 kilometers in 1 week. You just can't do more. The weekly driving time limit was maxed out and my average speed was 70 kilometers per hour. No truck can do more, diesel or electric. And the eActros handled it brilliantly. I'm seriously impressed by this truck. It's got a few teething problems here and there, but overall it's an awesome long-distance truck. I also really like how it looks. Driving it has been a lot of fun. In the next video, I'm heading back to Germany and have a lot of stressful city deliveries. If you want to see the video earlier, you can get early access with a YouTube membership. Greetings from France, and I wish you a great rest of the day. See you in the next video. Ciao!